What's up, everybody? It's Mr. Second Passport, and today we're going to do something that has never been done, per my knowledge, at least posted on the internet, and that is we're going to try to make an index or a ranking of the countries in the world, the main countries where expats kind of want to go, move to, in terms of the freedom that they currently give to their citizens and residents during these COVID times. Now there are two camps, right? The people who think like, oh, the COVID's just going to magically go away, and then there's the other camp of people who think the world has kind of changed for good, maybe forever, hopefully not, but probably a long time. And I'm kind of in that second camp, which I think is a little more realistic. And in this new world we live in, so to speak, this new COVID world, there's this new factor we need to take into account if you've been wanting to move abroad, if you're a wannabe expat, or if you already are an expat like myself and maybe you want to change countries. And that is the freedom. The freedom the country and the government affords us while living there during these COVID times. So let's take a look. This is a map here from kayak.com, here entering November 2020, of all the countries in the world, obviously, and we can see one big factor into the level of freedom the citizens have. One good look into it is the freedom of travel and movement that the countries are giving their citizens and residents. And that's what this graph illustrates right now in real time, the travel restrictions all over the world. Green is open. It means the country's open. Red means the country's still closed here in November 2020. As far as to incoming normal travel. And pink means the country's partially open, kind of depending on where you're coming from and other different factors like that. So, for example, we'll take the country where I currently live here, Ecuador. It's been open since about June, as long as you bring a COVID test. You don't have to do a quarantine or anything. There was a quarantine, but now there isn't. As long as you bring a COVID test, within 10 days of travel, you are okay. And I do know, for example, Colombia just opened up literally a month and a half ago, like mid-September, almost entering October. Like, it was really late to open up Colombia. And Peru's still not quite open all the way. They just are starting to open up a little bit, receive flights from certain only specific countries. It's weird. Kind of similar to Europe. So that's hence the pink here, same as Europe, right? Right, so what's going on right now here entering November? Well, there's, as you can imagine, with the colder weather coming, there's another wave, I guess you could say. And for example, just published today in Sky News, I'm getting this information. France, until December 1st, just declared a new kind of lockdown, and where people will only be able to leave their homes to buy essential goods and for medical reasons, and to exercise 1 hour a day. Really? Okay, I mean, for most people, this will cross France off their list. Just incredibly restrictive. But, the list goes on. Belgium, another hard-hit country supposedly. Non-essential shops have been shut, and trades that require close contact, like hairdressers, etc. So what does non-essential mean? Probably it means everyone with a business that doesn't maybe know someone in the government has to shut down. Is that what it means? Or it doesn't have buddies, with corporations, which basically kills all the little guys? I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Everything non-essential must shut down, but it's pretty hardcore. And it's probably definitely not a country where I want to live. Gyms, pools, for instance, and other cultural facilities are also closed, it says. Right? Let's take a look at Spain. People are only allowed to make a journey if going to work, buying medicine, or caring for someone. And it's true. Spain was one of those countries, like, in the really hard lockdown, you couldn't even leave your home, right? And it seems like they're going that way again. And I just talk to a friend of mine who's currently living in Spain. He is Spanish, and he said, yeah, you can. There's no interprovincial travel. You have to get special permits for that, and all small businesses basically getting completely steamrolled as well. So obviously, Spain is a pretty harsh country when it comes to freedom restrictions, but probably not the harshest, as we just saw an example from France. And as you can see here, Chile and Argentina. I just talked to a friend who lives in Argentina, and it's amazing. He said, "Get this, in the first several months of the lockdown, you couldn't even go out of your house depending on the last digit of your ID card. Like that, like the whole day. It was like even days, odd days is when you could go outside your house, and only for essential like buying food and stuff. Like that's hardcore freedom restriction. Basically turning everyone's house into a jail cell, more or less. And that's what they did in Argentina. Now they've loosened on that a little bit, but as you can see, it's still completely closed to international travel. Now this, if you were thinking about possibly living in Argentina, maybe you should take this new COVID, right, era freedom restrictions that they're doing in, right, consideration before moving. I just talked to another friend in Chile, and he said that in Chile it was super hardcore lockdown, and it's loosened up a lot currently here entering November 2020, and there's some people that don't even care anymore, and they're even walking around with no masks or whatever. But it's still completely locked down for international travel, Chile. And maybe it should tell you something about, well, do you really want to live in Argentina right now in this new COVID world we're living in? Maybe not. Now, I just talked to a friend of mine who lives in Mexico, and she said that for May and June, there was a hardcore lockdown, like hardcore. And now there are restrictions, like there's a curfew, police enforced curfew still, but the lockdowns is pretty loose, and there's a restriction against like meetups over 6 people and things like that. But generally, I've seen Mexico as one of the most open, lenient, freedom-fulfilling countries out there. They're completely open to international travel. Now, I have a brother who married a Thai girl, a Thai woman, right? And he said, it's not too bad in country as far as freedom restriction, but it isn't a democracy, and they are still closed. They don't care that, I don't care what they say. I'm sure 80 or 90% of Thais live off tourism, right? I don't know what the official figures are, but it must be something like that. But they don't seem to care about that because it's still closed, Thailand, to international travel, even now entering November. And he says, even if he left Thailand, being a resident, he still can't come back in. So he wants to come home for Christmas, but he obviously can't, right? Same story with a guy I know in Philippines. He's a legal resident in Philippines, married to a Filipina, and he cannot leave either. And he said the lockdown's been super hardcore. Government does not care about the small business situation or anything. And he also said, the country's still on travel restriction, and if he left, he cannot come back, even though he's a legal resident. So it's pretty hardcore all over here in Southeast Asia and pretty much Asia in general. I put together this index, this ranking of the countries that still afford you as a potential expat the most freedom or bang for your buck, you could say, right? And for me, here in Latin America, that's Mexico, Ecuador, Brazil, Dominican Republic, all places that I know well and love. Lived in some, visited for long periods of time others of those 4, but those 4 countries were the first to open, and some of them never even really closed altogether. But But Brazil, even though it got hit really bad by the virus, still opened really quickly. Not much, obviously, no travel restrictions right now. You might need a COVID test to enter, but that's about it. Same, it's pretty much the same as pre-COVID. And Mexico, Dominican, and Ecuador also the same. So for me, those are my top tier countries as far as freedom goes in this new COVID era that we live. Now, the UK and Ireland, Panama and Colombia come next, as you can see here. The UK and Ireland, with the exception to the rest of Europe, are open for travel, as pretty much as normal. And Panama is open too, but it just opened very recently, almost the same time as Colombia, like literally a month or so ago. Now they've begun to receive foreigners again, so it seems, according to this map. And in Colombia as well, Colombia had a very strict lockdown, very strict. And, they just opened up international travel again. If you're worried about your freedoms being restricted, I don't know if either of those two countries should be for you either, to tell you the truth, Panama or Colombia. The next tier are those European countries, Portugal, Greece, Italy, Spain, France, where it's kind of like I just mentioned, there's in-country, like in Spain, for instance, there's in-country travel restrictions. You can't travel between provinces. There's curfews. There's like pretty much the rest of Latin America and the rest of the world, maybe except for maybe the U.S. and Canada. There's obligatory and public mask wearing. That is something you should keep in mind before moving to a country in Latin America. Is that you're going to be basically obligated to wear a mask anywhere in public, outdoors, indoors, doesn't matter. Like the country where I'm in right now, Ecuador. Just something we're going to have to live with for the time being, unfortunately. Right? So definitely less freedom in Europe right now than some of the countries in Latin America. Right? And after Europe, well, then there's some harder core Latin American countries. Like I just talked to a friend today, right before I did this video, from Costa Rica, and he said Costa Rica is still closed to foreigners, and Costa Rica makes a ton of its money, its people, from tourism. So it's pretty amazing to me that Costa Rica has been so strict. Argentina, Chile, Peru's had a ridiculously hard lockdown, super strict. I don't think I would consider living in Peru anymore in this new COVID era that we live in. If I was considering it before, I would reconsider now. And I definitely would reconsider living down here in the cone, in the tip of South America, Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. On the bottom of the COVID Freedom Index ranking, first ever, from yours truly, Mr. Second Passport, is the Southeast Asian countries like Thailand, Philippines, China, Indonesia. For me, as you can see, still closed, no real plans on reopening. And it's super interesting. And obviously, we know what happened with China and their hardcore lockdown on the Wuhan. Something to consider before you move right now to Asia or Southeast Asia, that your liberties and your freedoms could be greatly restricted on a moment's notice for pretty much any reason now. Now that these governments have learned how to do it, I wouldn't be surprised if they found other reasons or other diseases or new outbreaks of this disease to just go out and pull back those freedoms again. They did it once and they're still doing it 9-10 months later. So what's to prevent them to keep doing it or to do it again in the near future? So anyway, something to keep in mind here, the first ever COVID Freedom Index ranking of countries that will not infringe on your personal freedoms if you decided to move and live and maybe do business there. So just something to keep in mind. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the button and ring the bell below, the red button, And so you can stay tuned for more videos just like this. Take care.